Picture the most ordinary thing in the world. A person standing outside a building, breathing smoke in and out on purpose. You've seen it 1,000 times. You've stopped finding it strange. But step back and look at it as an alien would. A creature deliberately setting a plant on fire and pulling the smoke into its own lungs. On purpose. For no obvious reason at all. Every instinct you own says, smoke is danger. Your eyes water. You cough. Your body screams get away from it. It's the smell of the thing that kills you in the dark. And yet humans all over the world independently decided to override that alarm. To breathe the danger in. On purpose. And they've been doing it for an astonishingly long time. So obviously you know this story. Somebody somewhere got bored, tried it, liked it, got hooked, and here we are. A habit. A vice, a thing people do to relax. That story is almost entirely wrong. For nearly the whole of human history, this was not a habit and not for pleasure. It was one of the most sacred things a person could do. The people who first reached for these plants weren't unwinding after a long day. They were reaching for the dead, for the spirit world, for healing, for something on the far side of the ordinary. The casual cigarette you pictured a minute ago? That's the strange part. That's the recent invention. That's the version that would have baffled almost everyone who came before. So the real question isn't when we picked up a bad habit. It's when we first decided that breathing smoke could carry us somewhere else. And why on earth we ever thought that? Why would anyone breathe smoke on purpose? Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and share it with your friends. Fair reaction, Pebble. But think about what fire already was to these people. We spent a whole story on it. Fire was the center of the world, the thing that made night survivable. And some plants, thrown on a fire, don't just smell strong. They change how you feel. Your head goes light, the world tilts, something shifts behind your eyes. Now add one more thing. Some plants thrown on a fire don't just smell strong, they change how you feel. Your head goes light, the world tilts, something shifts behind your eyes. To a people who believe the world was full of spirits, that isn't chemistry. It's proof. Proof the smoke is a doorway, that the plant is talking, that something just answered. So breathing smoke wasn't a vice waiting to be discovered. It was a technology. A tool for reaching the one place humans have always most wanted to reach and never could. The other side, and naturally, Gramps knows exactly how it started. Gramps has a theory. Gramps has, as always, been waiting for this. In his version, people have always smoked to relax. A hard hunt, a long walk, so you sit of an evening and have a comforting puff. Same as ever, nothing new under the sun. Hold that thought, Gramps, because we're going to come back and take it apart. The evidence says the exact opposite. But first, Pebble's real question. When does any of this actually begin? So when did it actually start? For that we go to Utah, to a dried lake bed called the Great Salt Lake Desert. Cracked mud today, but cold green marshland 12,000 years ago. A small band of hunter-gatherers camped there, hunting ducks. Mostly, the site is full of duck bones. And at the center of camp, as always, a hearth, a fire. Thousands of years later, archaeologists excavated that hearth. And in the ash, they found 4 tiny seeds. Smaller than this full stop. Almost nothing. Almost missed entirely. 4 seeds of wild tobacco. And here's the thing that makes it matter. Tobacco doesn't grow in a marsh. The nearest place it could have grown was mountains, at least 13 kilometers away. So nobody dropped these by accident. Nobody's dinner grew them. Somebody walked up a mountain, gathered this specific plant, and carried it all the way back to camp on purpose. That's the tell. Deliberate effort for a plant you can't eat and don't need. The radiocarbon dates put it at roughly 12,300 years ago. That shattered the old picture, pushing our relationship with tobacco back 9,000 years earlier than anyone had proof of, to the first people in this landscape. The lead researcher put it beautifully. People in the past were the ultimate botanists. They figured out what every plant around them did, and they clocked this one's power almost the moment they arrived. But, and this is the part you have to be honest about, 4 seeds do not tell you what they did with the plant. And that gap is where it gets interesting. So they smoked it, right? Maybe. But maybe not, and the researchers were careful. You can do a lot with tobacco that isn't smoking. You can chew the leaves, suck them, tuck a wad in your cheek. That's their best guess for wishbone. The seed simply spat out, the way you discard a pip. Ancestors of the Pueblo chewed wild tobacco much later. Smoking here can't be proven. So if we want the first proof of smoke actually being drawn through something and inhaled, we need a different kind of object. We need a pipe. And someone had to invent that pipe, which is where Uncle Rocco insists on being involved. Rocco's first pipe has the hole in the wrong place. His second collapses. His 7th somehow is worse than having no pipe at all. And again, this isn't really a joke, because a working pipe is real engineering. A chamber to hold the plant, a channel for the smoke, a draw that pulls air the right way without burning your hand. That takes generations. And in Alabama, at a site by the Flint River, there's a pipe carved from limestone that got those choices right. For 70 years, it sat forgotten in a paper bag in a repository drawer. Then, working with the Eastern Band of Cherokee, researchers finally tested the residue inside it. And ringing the inside of that pipe, they found nicotine, the chemical fingerprint of tobacco. That pipe is about 3,500 years old, which is genuinely ancient, and also 9,000 years younger than those seeds in Utah. See the gap? Tobacco use, 12,000 years. Proof of smoking tobacco, 3.5. 9,000 years where people clearly valued the plant, but we cannot prove how they took it in. And Ivy has been standing there, arms folded, for the entire chapter, waiting to say the obvious thing. A pipe isn't proof of anything. People smoke all kinds of plants. How do you know any given pipe was even for tobacco? And she's right. That's why the residue matters. Without a chemical test, a pipe is just a tube. Plenty turn up where tobacco never grew, holding plants we can't name. So the honest position is, the chemistry proves it when we have it, and admits it doesn't know when we don't. Which brings us to the clearest, strangest case of all, and it isn't tobacco. What else did they burn? High in the Pamir Mountains, on a plateau 3,000 meters up, there's a cemetery 2,500 years old. A cold, thin-aired place to bury the dead. In the graves, archaeologists found wooden bowls, braziers, each one holding small stones that had clearly been heated until they cracked. Something had been burned in them, close to the body, at the funeral. When they analyzed the char, they found the chemistry of cannabis. Not the mild, fibrous kind grown for rope. This had high levels of the compound that alters the mind. This is the earliest clear, chemically proven evidence of people burning cannabis to breathe its smoke. And every detail of where it was found screams the same thing. This was not a party. It was a funeral. The smoke was for the dead, burned beside a body in thin, cold mountain air, most likely to carry the living toward the departed, or the departed onward. And Nana understands this better than anyone at the fire. In her world, the plants that change your mind and the plants that heal your body are the same set of plants, handled with care. To her, none of this is casual. A plant is powerful, is described, respected, and rationed. You reach for it when someone is dying, or being born, or being buried. And that is the pattern everywhere we look. Tobacco in the Americas, cannabis in the mountains, countless other plants and smokes across countless cultures, almost always the same role. Sacred, medical, ceremonial. Not a habit, not a product, not something you did idly while waiting for a bus. A controlled act at the biggest moments of a life before the spirits are the dead. So now we go back and settle up with Gramps. Because Gramps told us a while ago that people have always smoked just to relax. Same as ever, nothing new under the sun. He's wrong. And he's wrong in the most revealing way possible. Because the casual, relaxing, do-it-everyday version of smoking isn't ancient at all. It's the youngest part of the entire story. For 12,000 years, this was rare. Guarded, meaningful. Something that happened a handful of times in a life, at the edges of the ordinary world, under the eye of someone like Nana. The thing you pictured at the start, the bored, daily, anytime cigarette, is a product of the last few centuries, of industry, of growing the plant by the millions of tons. Industry did something no shaman ever would. It took the sacred plant, stripped the ritual clean off it, and sold you the smoke by itself. Cheap, constant, and detached from any meaning at all. And that's the reversal. We didn't slowly civilize a wild habit. We did the opposite. We took something rare and sacred and controlled, and we made it common, hollow, and constant. The researchers who study ancient tobacco see this clearly. Several work with native nations, separating the sacred ceremonial plant respected for millennia from the commercial product that harms people today. Those are two different things wearing the same leaf. One is a 12,000-year-old sacrament. The other is a modern mass-market habit that kills more people than almost anything else humans have made. So Gramps had it exactly backwards. Nothing new under the sun, except the single most important thing, the meaning. The meaning is what changed, the meaning is what we lost. And Ivy, to her credit, isn't quite satisfied, because there's still one honest hole in the whole story, and she wants it named out loud. You still never told me when someone first inhaled smoke, the real first time. Not the oldest pipe, the actual beginning. And the honest answer is, we will never know, because the first time is invisible. Smoke leaves nothing behind. A breath is not an artifact. It doesn't fossilize. We have seeds, which don't tell us how they were used. We have pipes, which don't always tell us what was in them. We have residue, but only where it happened to survive. Somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, someone breathed in by accident, felt the world tilt, and decided it meant something. That person is gone. That moment is gone. We can date the seed, we can date the pipe, we cannot date the idea. The moment a human first decided smoke was a doorway is the one thing this story can't give back. So come back now. It's today. And somewhere right now, a person is standing in a doorway, breathing smoke, checking their phone, thinking about nothing in particular. They have no idea they're holding the frayed end of the longest thread in human culture. One that runs back through factories, funerals in the mountains, an ice age fire. The people at the other end of that thread would barely recognize what it became. They reached for smoke to touch the sacred. We turned it into something to do with our hands. The oldest seeds are 12,000 years old. The meaning behind them is older still. And it's the meaning, not the smoke, that turned out to be the fragile part. Because here's the quiet truth under it. Every one of these plants was reached for by someone in pain or grief or awe, trying to reach further than a body allows. And that need never went anywhere. The plants changed, the rituals faded, the factories came. But the reaching, wanting to feel other than you feel, is the oldest part of all. That's still you. So when did ancient humans start smoking? The truest answer. Long before the pipe and long before the habit, the moment a grieving person watched smoke rise and thought, maybe that goes where I can't. We can't date that thought. But we can feel the shape of it, because it's still in us. Nana would tell you these plants were never toys. They were doorways, and doorways deserve respect. You do it too, just with different doorways. So the next time you see that curl of smoke in a doorway, you'll know it isn't a modern thing at all. It's the worn-down end of something ancient and sacred and almost forgotten. And every one of these plants had a second life you haven't heard yet. Not as a doorway to the dead, but as a medicine for the living. Because long before there was a doctor, there was someone like Nana, a pouch of dried plants, and an old question, what do you do when someone you love gets sick? That story's one tap away. I'm the Ancient Bro. Reach gently. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and share it with your friends.